Did you know that dance breaks are good for your heart? That swimming can help you sleep better? Even roller skating can help keep you healthy. Learn how to make physical activity fun for you and your family. Visit cdc.gov/moving matters.
A number of people are telling us that pregame, A-Rod was schmoozing folks like fans from the Glenn Taylor perch, but that was before the game. Once the game began, yes, that he was in his normal position. Even that, I would think, would be a little bit controversial, but it's you got a little better covered then before anybody is actually in the seats. Questions already coming in for our next guest. Russo Radio, Bradshaw and Bryan KFAN text line is open, 646-86, and Russo joins us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. I will start with a toss-up question that I received from a texter. What are the chances, writes 952 guy, we will have a fully healthy Minnesota Wild team by the first game of the playoffs? That's from Kyle in Hopkins, Minnesota.
Well, the way this season has gone, it's doubtful. I mean, it's been one thing after the other. So even if they get healthy, it's hard to envision that. But again, what constitutes healthy? Even if Kaprizov and Eriksson come back before then, how healthy are they? Are they 100%? Things like that. So, it's hard to guess right now, but it's just been one thing after the other in what's been really a miserable couple months. It's crazy. Is
it now your belief that it's more likely that Kaprizov is seen before Eriksson Ek?
Well, I think that when they said minimum 4 weeks, I really think the timetable was always going to be like 5 to 7 for the type of injury that I think he's dealing with. And so I think he is going to be back. But they need clarity. There's a week and change until the March 7th trade deadline. And, they need to know if they can go out and make some moves, if they're able to. And that's going to be dependent on him coming back. I saw him the other day. He's alive and well, but we haven't seen him on the ice yet. And I think that's the biggest thing. But I do think that Eriksson Ek's dealing with a significant injury that's probably keeping him out for the rest of the regular season. But, this is Eriksson Ek. This guy tried to play on a broken leg a couple years ago in the playoffs. There's no doubt he's going to do his best to try to come back here. But, again, with the March 7th trade deadline, Bill Guerin really needs to have a timetable set in stone for both those guys.
So on Eriksson Ek, can you confirm that this was a new injury that he incurred in practice? Because a lot of people, of course, wanted to speculate and say, well, I wonder if he got hurt, given everybody else got hurt during the tournament. What do we know about that? Was it a completely new injury, or was it an old one that got worse?
Yeah, I am thinking the latter. I think that he went into the tournament with something. I don't even think it's necessarily what kept him out of that game, the game before the tournament. And then played on it during, and then, practiced last week and clearly, played against Detroit and practiced again. And then we haven't seen him again. From just reading the tea leaves of the way that people are talking, I just think that it got worse in that practice. That he was somehow able to play on it fine, practice on it a couple times and played in Detroit. And something happened in that practice that aggravated the injury that he was probably playing on. So that's just my gut. So, but I can't say that for sure. As you know, with the Wild and Bill Guerin, they're not exactly transparent with a lot of the injuries.
So, but it is fair to say, on the basis of your own reporting, that you think it's going to be a while in his case too, right? You think this is going to be extended?
I think I even remember the injury that happened. I think it was against Carolina. I think he blocked a shot. And from what I gather, they have more of a firm timetable on him. Okay. The other thing is I'm starting to hear, obviously, Joe Smith and I did that story, I think it was in today's Athletic or yesterday, of 5 centers that
yesterday
they should go after.
I read it, yep.
Yeah, if Eriksson Ek was out. And I, talking to some people in the league today, I get the impression that Bill Guerin's calling around on centers. So, so that would lead to me to believe that, one, he knows that's probably the more pressing need right now, and two, that he knows that this is something that could keep Eric Sinek sidelined, for the rest of the regular season. But again, everything is speculative. I gotta stress that because again, with Eric Sinek and this time of year, if things get hairy in the standings, you just know that he's going to do everything in his power to try to come back.
So for the casual hockey fans out there, explain once again, do the primer, the sort of the basics on what dictates the Wild potentially having some financial flexibility to add one of the centers, for example, that you guys wrote about yesterday.
Yeah, so Kaprizov's on LTIR right now. That means that they know that he's missing 10 games in 24 days, which is obviously happening. And then they have to decide on Eric Sinek, too, on if he's going to eventually change to LTIR. If you do that by the trade deadline, what you're essentially saying for the Minnesota Wild, who have no cap space, is that they are doing that for the purpose of being able to spend, either one or both of their cap spaces and having that flexibility. So essentially, it allows you, if they are out for the rest of the regular season, to exceed the cap by their cap hit. And obviously, the Wild aren't about to go out and get $14 million worth of players, but this is why Bill needs to know really on both players by the deadline, because if they are going to come back in the regular season and the Wild have to become cap compliant, then they cannot go out and acquire players that are going to help right now. If they're out for the rest of the regular season, there's no playoff cap. There's no playoff salary cap. So that's the reason why you can exceed the salary cap, because it doesn't matter if you're over the cap come game one of the playoffs. So that's the big reason right now that they need to have a firm idea on one or both of these guys by the deadline, because they do not have the ability right now with them coming back to make significant moves at the deadline. It would be really, really difficult. You'd have to get third-party conduits. You'd have to get teams to retain Sal. They'd have to get extremely creative. But all of a sudden, if they have Eric Sinek and or Kaprizov out, they theoretically are swimming in cap space.
So is it fair to say that is your belief that ownership would green light the sorts of moves you're talking about here, if indeed they do have that flexibility?
Yeah, I do think so. And again, it's not like they're going to go get $14 million worth of players, but it would allow them to go make some moves. And again, they might not be the most pressing need right now to me is centers. And, I'm not convinced 100% that even Lou Lamoriello is willing to trade Brock Nelson. He historically has let guys walk, in free agency. So even if Brock hasn't signed an extension by the deadline, it doesn't necessarily mean that the Islanders are going to trade him. Dylan Cousins, the Wild have a lot of interest in, I believe, at 24. They see the upside, all that stuff. But there's several teams coming after him. So one, do they have the assets to make it work? And two, do the Sabres even? They have no reason to 100% have to trade him. So that might be, fool's gold. So then, you're talking about depth guys or third and fourth line guys that are really out there. And the one guy I could see the Wild really going after is Montreal's Jake Evans, because he's a great penalty killer. He's a right shot guy. He could add a little offensively. He could play third line. He's probably a third line center on the Wild temporarily until that gets back. Could be second line. I have a feeling that they'd go after him. And then there's a lot of thought out there that Joel Armia, who's actually his PK rotation partner, is available as well. And some teams are trying to actually get the two of them together because they're one of the best penalty kill duos in the league. And wouldn't that be something if Bill Guerin actually did find a weakness on his team, which is their penalty kill, and instead of just going out and getting Evans, maybe going out and getting Armia with him? We'll see. But those are the type of moves that I think that he'd be looking at to making or able to make at this point.
Another texter, do you think, Russo, our second line is really that threatening?
No. Especially with Eric Sinek out. But, no, I mean, Johansson has 5 goals all season in 49 games, playing top 6 minutes. I mean, that's just really hard to imagine. And right now with Eric Sinek out, Freddie Gaudreau's up there. He has a very quiet 11 goals. But, yeah, right now, you have a second line with Johansson and Gaudreau and Hinostroza, who they just claimed off waivers. So that's not threatening at all. Now, if the person that's texting is asking when they're healthy, I also think that they're not very threatening. And that's some area that all year long, I just thought they should have produced more from that line. And that's one reason why I think that Bill would also love to go out and get a top 6 winner. I think that's something he's wanted to do all year, is essentially eventually replace or at least push down Johansson in the lineup and go and get somebody that could go play in that space, like a Brock Besser or something like that. And so we'll see. Suddenly again, he might have a lot of money at the deadline. We'll have to see.
So presumably, if you go down that road, I would think the objective would be to acquire someone who can help you beyond this season as well, correct? Not just the rest of this season, where there's no guarantee of anything, but here we got an extra way to add a player who can help us down the line as well.
Yeah, and I think that's really why they have a lot of interest in Cousins, because he's got a lot of term left on his deal. He's 24 years old. He's scored 31 goals as a 21/22-year-old. Can they make that work? And that's what's intriguing about him is the cost certainty in a league where the cap is going up. That's also the reason why they have interest in Brock Nelson. Brock, not only could he, help now, in their opinion, but they would try to keep him beyond July 1. So that's why it's intriguing there too. But again, I think a lot of teams are coming after Brock Nelson, and I just don't know if if the Wild have the assets that can overtake the other teams. If he's willing to part with the assets that would be needed, because again, he traded his 2025 first-round pick. So unless he's also willing to trade his 2026, he's going to have to send probably a prospect or two with a second-round pick. And so, it gets a little murky on whether or not you can even get Brock. And then the other thing is, if you wait for Lou to make a decision, if he's even willing to trade Brock, then all of a sudden some of these other centers could, so to speak, be off the board. And that's why, I'm starting to get the impression that Bill's already calling around on centers and maybe even, touch base with teams like Montreal and Seattle about some of these other centers that are out there.
How do Wild injuries compare to other NHL teams? Gary from Maple Grove asks.
I think they have the second most man games in the NHL this year. Colorado, I believe, is one. But, again, and I'm not, obviously, they're including guys like Landeskog, and they've had guys like Nichushkin out of the lineup, some big names out of their lineup. But it just feels like the names the Wild have had out of their lineup and when it's happened has been really, to me, the most devastating in the league. I mean, it seems like every time they face a Winnipeg or a Colorado or a Dallas or some of these teams that they're chasing, Vegas, it's when they have a laundry list of injuries. And so, Kirill Kaprizov has missed 20 games this year. Arsenek has missed 15. Brodin's missed a whole bunch. Spurgeon's missed some. It's just been over and over again with all their guys, all their big guys.
They're not in danger of actually missing the playoffs, are they?
Well, I mean, nothing's locked. Right now, I think so. Vancouver and Calgary have been sort of jockeying in the last 3 days, winning, losing, and just sort of hopping each other. And now I think the Wild's only 8 points clear of the ninth spot. So a couple wins, couple losses for the teams behind them, it absolutely could get hairy here. So they're trying to keep their head above water, but that's why the game the other night against Detroit, it's such a tough loss. At this time of year to lose a game where you definitely should have won, it's hard to fathom, and that's why they've really got to, without their big guys here for the foreseeable future, they're going to have to just continue to play really tight checking hockey like we saw the other night, only they're going to need the goals to support that hockey, and they didn't get that the other night.
How do we feel about our goaltending right now?
Not great. I mean, Gus has been really up and down. I mean, he's 4-2 in his last 6, but since January 7th, he has given up 3 or more goals in I think 6 of 8 or 6 of 9 starts. He hasn't been great. I mean, right now, Flowers definitely outperforming him, and so I think that they've got to get him on track, or everything's to me meaningless. I was a little surprised actually that Gus is not starting tonight and he's starting in Colorado, just because Marc-Andre Fleury 2 or 3 weeks ago in Denver played one of his best games of the season. But they're going Flower tonight and Gus tomorrow, and they've got to get him back on track, though.
Texter, this looks like 612. Boy, Russo's like the anti-Sid Hartman. Every time he's on, I feel more and more negative about this team every time. It's so refreshing for me to be in the position where I'm not viewed as the negative one. Do you care to respond to 612 guy? Do you feel like you're trying to be negative, or do you feel like you're just trying to react to what you see?
No, I mean, I'm just reporting what's going on right now. I mean, there are some significant injuries here, and I don't think it's being negative, explaining everything with the trades and all that type of stuff. So yeah, I mean, obviously they've had a really quality season up to this point, considering the number of injuries that they've had and the timing of it. So I'm just trying to paint the picture, and certainly I'm not trying to be overly negative at all. I'm just trying to explain what's going on and with Eric Sinek and Kaprizov and how they got to react to it.
With the injuries to both of those individuals, another texter asks, which younger players have taken advantage of the additional ice time and deserve an elevated role going forward?
I mean, obviously, Marco Rossi just continues to be superb for them. 21 goals, 50 points, always at the net. I think Kuznetsov has played much, much better lately, and probably does, warrant an elevated role. Freddie Gaudreau just hasn't produced in that second line role really much of the year, and so I wouldn't mind seeing that for a little bit. And Ogren, again, I just don't know what they have in him right now. Like even the other night, I thought he played a really quality game, and then at the end of it, you're asking really, what did he do? So is he going to be a point producer, or is he just sort of a third line checking winger? But so, you got to get more guys definitely scoring. And to me, it's more the veterans like Marcus Johansson. I thought the other night was really terrible. Zuccarello needs to start producing. Gaudreau needs to start producing. Foligno's been really good, especially defensively this year. But those other guys really need to start playing better, in my opinion. Calibration
question here on Kaprizov. I mean, it's all like a little bit imprecise to say, all right, at what percentage are they willing to bring Kaprizov back, either for late in the regular season and or the postseason? Is it 62%? Is it 85%? Is it no? We will only bring him back if the medical people have cleared him to say he may be rusty, but medically speaking, there's no reason to think he won't be at 100%. How do the Wild figure that all out?
It's hard to really say because I don't think they have the total control here. I mean, this is, this was a decision that Kirill made in concert with his agent and the Wild's medical staff to finally pull himself. But his agent is very much involved in this, and they're using a doctor in New York that has done other surgeries of the like, and so it's going to be largely up to that that doctor and the Wild's medical team putting it together. And then you're right. I mean, Kirill's going to have to make eventually the decision. But it's really hard to tell. I don't think the Wild are going to make him do anything. It's going to have to be up to Kirill. Clearly, Kirill was not feeling right when he pulled himself from the lineup and went to this measure to have surgery. And so, and it is the type of injury that I think that he's going to have to really feel comfortable playing through. So, they've just got to get him right. And he is their best bet to make the playoffs, which is also why, I like in a lot of like before the whole Eric Sinek thing happened, the question I got a lot from fans was about Kirill. Like, could they have, hold Kirill out, hold Kirill out, hold Kirill out? And what I was always saying was that Kirill's your best bet to make the playoffs. You're not going to intentionally hold him out, especially if it's a couple of weeks. Plus, he needs a runway to get going for the playoffs. So we've seen that in the past with him as well, that he needs the games. Where now with Eric Sinek being hurt, it does now suddenly give them an out where they can maybe at least address a couple of situations. So I think it gives them almost the opportunity to, hold off with Eric Sinek and make sure he is healthy, and then really work on trying to get Kirill back by the end of, say the month of March and get him back in the lineup. It's
Utah tonight, correct?
Yeah, Utah tonight. I'm not there. Joe is there.
That's what I thought. Are they dangerous? Are they what? They're looking at their record. Are they somebody we got to worry about tonight?
Yeah, they haven't lost at home in a month. They've won a couple 2-1 games in a row. They've won 5 of 7, 3 of the last 4, beating some pretty good teams like Washington. And so, I believe I can't remember. They just outside another big win, but they are really playing a really quality defensive brand of hockey lately, and they've got a couple of really quality studs in Logan Cooley and Dylan Gunther and Clayton Keller. So especially if you put them on the power play, as Keller showed the Wild the last time they were in Utah, he can light you up. So they've got to stay out of the box tonight. But I do expect that this is going to be a tight checking game, a fast-paced game as well.
Are you ever going to cover the team again?
I did cover the Detroit game.
Oh, that's true.
But no, I'll be back for the Bruins game, and then I'm actually on the next road trip to Seattle and Vancouver.
Yeah, and Louis on that one,
Louis
I think,
can
too.
be there.
Yeah, he's back with you again. 100%. Yeah. That's good. All right, my friend, thanks for the update. We'll chat next week. Thanks, Russo.
Yep. See you, Dan.
That is Russo Radio helping us out each and every week on Minnesota Wild hockey. Speaking of negativity, 763 guy writes, same story every year at the Wild. Everyone needs to play better. Maybe they're playing at their peak. Well, but the difference right now is they're trying to play at their peak without their two best players. I mean, look, I'm not here to make excuses for the club, but the same old story bit doesn't really make much sense when Kaprizov has been out. How long has he been out already? Has it been 4 weeks already or 3? Whatever it's been. He's going to be out much longer.
2 weeks before the 2-week break.
Okay. So whatever it is, and it sounds like Eriksson Ek's going to be out a while, right? So if we're being fair, no team is going to survive losing two of their best players for the extended period of time that they're losing them. I mean, you try to stay afloat, you try to be inventive, you try to be creative with other people, you try to lean on your depth. But that's where, like I said, I think it's going to be a hard year, even if you want to lay the hammer down and say, God, here we are again, not out of the first round of the playoffs. This is getting old. What are we doing? I don't know if it's a year you can hammer them if, indeed, those two players are going to continue to be out as long as is expected. Now, the best case scenario is they both end up being available for the first round of the playoffs, right? Although Russo reminds us, I think it's an 8-point lead, which still sounds pretty prohibitive to me, barring a collapse. But I guess all it takes is, you can, a 4-game, 5-game losing streak all of a sudden, and then it's tightening up, and then you start getting worried, another team gets hot, which I don't think has happened right now. So
you got to find a way to keep greasing out points.
That's it.
Like, even if it's just getting one. That's why these big leads always seem so insurmountable, because there's so many, what do they call them, 3-point games?
That's it.
Or even if you get to overtime, you get a point and you at least get a little separation.
None of this bodes well, obviously, for this being the season. Okay, well, yeah, we're finally going to win a playoff series, and maybe we're going to make a little bit of noise. No, none of this bodes well as long as you have the injury issues that this team that continues to plague this club. But I don't think it's Russo going out of his way to be negative. I think it's hard not to be negative about the current condition of the club. And some of that just has to do, again, frankly, with, it's a boring subject, but those two injuries that you really can't make up, right? Especially, it's almost like, okay, we're used to the Kaprizov thing. We have to accept it. It's not great, but at least we still have Eriksson Ek. And then suddenly he gets hurt in practice. It sounds like Russo thinks it was an older injury that might have gotten aggravated, correct? That goes back to even before the break. So bottom line is, this is not a team blessed with an extraordinary amount of high-end talent. And I'm not sure, again, how many teams, even more talented teams, could handle losing two of their best players as long as it appears both of them are going to be out. It's unfortunate, but it can't be denied. We can't pretend. I mean, the team can say all the right things. The players can go about the business of trying to do their jobs, which is what they're paid to do. And maybe they will. Maybe they'll hang in there better than we thought. It certainly looked like that the first game back against Detroit, where they made a nice comeback in a game where it looked like they were dead and buried. But then that kind of got nullified by the tables being turned on them in the return engagement against Detroit the other night. That was back here, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Those basically flip-flopped.
That's kind of the problem. So we'll have to see. And again, you could have declarations of, well, everybody, they're going to get back, they're going to come back, but then it's what level are they going to come back? How effective will they be? Are either of these injuries the kind of injuries that could be, aggravated? Are they chronic situations? And so there's a lot of open-endedness to. We're fragile about injuries too. I think mentally it's hard Because it just feels like we have had more than our share. Not just in hockey, by the way. It seems like other sports as well, although it appears Dante DiVincenzo is going to slated to come back tonight, right? He's listed, I think, as questionable.
Yes.
So is Edwards.
Yes.
But I think both are expected to play tonight.
Finchie said with PA today that Dante did the whole practice yesterday, and he obviously had some hurdles to clear in terms of we're going to see how he feels today, make sure he feels good enough to go. He said there's probably going to be a minutes restriction because that's how it works with these guys. I don't know what that is now.
Randall's still not with the team, correct? Right. And is Rudy even with the team?
That I don't know.
I can't remember, but he's still got back spasms, so he's not expected to play tonight either, correct?
No.
So who guards Luka, who guards LeBron tonight?
Man.
For the Wolves. It's got to be combo platter. You're using McDaniels on both of them from time to time, right?
Who do you put Jaden on? Because Jaden had nothing for Luka either last year. Everybody wanted to talk about Gobert, which was stupid on his face.
Yeah.
But Luka just kind of bulldozed. I mean, Nakia will have some.
Have to have some.
Yeah. Ant's obviously going to have some. Dante, if he's playing, will probably have to have some.
Can Shannon just pound on him?
Jalen Clark.
Yeah, Jalen Clark would make more sense, actually. You're right.
We kind of forget about him, even though because he just got here, but Jalen Clark's probably going to want some of that.
But Luka weighs like twice as much.
Clark's
although he's already allegedly lost weight.
Well, have you seen the pictures? Are they AI or not?
That's what I wonder. It's weird.
Or is he just wearing a different size uniform?
Maybe he's just, the stuff was fitted. Maybe that was all part of the conspiracy. I purposefully want to look bloated early so that then I can know just by wearing a different cut of shirt that I'm suddenly going to look like I'm on Ozempic.
Because he did, even getting off that private plane, look slimmer than we last saw him.
No question.
Or maybe, like Mike Trudell, Lakers reporter, told us in the 3 o'clock hour, maybe he's hitting the gym with Pelinka every morning. Maybe he's on the Pelinka plan.
Pelinka plan, yeah. As we heard from Trudell, you're right.
I loved that. That was great. Because Pelinka's earned it.
612 guy writes, Sophie Swanson has touched the ball 6 times and shot 6 times. Barrington's finest is not afraid. Purdue women's basketball must be playing somewhere right now.
They probably are. I will say she's averaging like 17 points in the last 6 or 7 games, and they moved her into the starting lineup. She can
score a little bit. They have a lot of other issues on that club, though. That's the issue, or that's the question, I think. All right, let's do this. We've got a lot of catching up to do on our continuing Ode to a Dead Guy, the Gene Hackman story breaking earlier today that he was found dead along with his wife, one of their dogs. The deaths are now being classified as quote-unquote suspicious, with a lot of open-endedness to that particular term. Very, very sad story. We have done our best to try to ode Gene's outstanding cinematic career. We've got some great, great sound that we're going to be able to include the rest of the way, so please stay with us. Gene Hackman played an FBI agent in a motion picture called Mississippi Burning, which was an attempt to go down memory lane history to discuss the civil rights era, the 3 slain civil rights workers, and the premise of the way the movie was set up was Hackman was paired with a sort of an East Coast snob insider. Willem, is it pronounced Dafoe? I believe was the other actor. So it was sort of a odd couple arrangement between the two of them, and they're trying to crack the case. They're trying to get inside a racist redneck southern town. And one of the more memorable scenes in a searing motion picture is when Hackman finds himself, he plays Special Agent Rupert Anderson in Mississippi Burning. And he finds himself in one of those like unofficial drinking establishments with at least 1 or 2 members of the sheriff's department and several other quote-unquote good old boys, right? And they're very distrustful of him. And they're trying to size him up. And they're sort of trying to scare him off. And what you're going to hear is a highly expurgated, because it needed to be, but I think still very effective scene in which Hackman kind of listens for a while, lets the good old boys get it out of their system, and then erupts in one of those Hackman-esque scenes, one of those Hackman-esque moments.
We ain't too interested in your good old Mississippi boy stories, Anderson. You ain't from here no more. Why'd you leave anyway?
I just wanted to change the scenery. You know, the grit started leaving a bad taste in my mouth.
Well, if that's how you feel about it, Mr. FBI man, why don't you drink up that beer and get the hell on out of here and back to your commie-loving bosses up north?
Oh, you must not know my boss, Mr. Hoover. He's not too fond of commies. He'd be on your side there.
I don't give two whose side you're Mr. Hoover's on, boy. All I know is we got 5,000 in this county who ain't registered a vote yet. And as far as I'm concerned, they never will. So you can tell your stiff suits up there in Washington, D.C. that they ain't gonna change us one bit. Unless it's over my dead body. Or a lot of dead.
You'd kill Frank? Is that what you're saying?
I wouldn't give it no more thought than wringing a cat's neck. And there ain't a court in Mississippi that'd convict me for it.
How about you, Deputy? How you with wringing necks, huh?
Just keep pushing me, Hoover boy.
Get this straight, you criminal. You tell your bosses up north they ain't never gonna find them civil rightsers down here. So you might as well pack up your bags and head your ass on back up north where you belong.
Wake up! And you get this straight, kicker. Don't you go mistaking me for some whole other body. You got your brains in your if you think we're just gonna fade away. We're gonna be here till this thing's finished. How about you, Deputy?
Is that gun just for show? Or do you get to shoot people once in a while? Thanks for the beer.
Thanks for the beer. How good is that?
It's a classic walk-off.
It's just about as good a walk-off as you could get. And at that point, I think they knew that they had a worthy adversary that was not going to go away all that easily. And the controlled, I mean, that's the other, I think, brilliant part about Hackman is most of his scenes are less is more, right? They're understated, which means that when he does erupt, the way he erupts there, but even there, I thought it was like controlled aggression, controlled meltdown. One of the most effective scenes from that motion picture for sure. And, one of the debates that break out throughout the film is he is originally from Mississippi. And he is of the view that if we're going to cut through this stuff, we're probably going to have to cut some corners. And his partner is Ivy League bred East Coast guy who wants to play it all by the book, right? We play by the book. It's very similar to the conflict that develops in The Untouchables between Kevin Costner and Sean Connery, right? Where Costner, as Elliot Ness, is trying to be on the up and up and dealing with Capone. And the Connery character basically is saying, you want to win this? Because if you want to win this, you're going to have to fight dirty. They bring a knife to the fight. You got to respond with a gun. That's the Chicago way. And similar in that film, that's the tension that exists between Defoe and Gene Hackman through it's a very, very powerful motion picture. And in it, he had some great scenes with the actress Frances McDormand, who is married to the deputy that he addresses. And in that scene, and in which she is racked with great guilt about what her husband is involved in. And so part of his job is to try to, get her to speak the truth. And there's almost a feeling of there is an unspoken affection between the two. And in fact, Hackman has said that the original script called for him to quote unquote make love to her at some point in the film. And he ultimately convinced the director to not go, to let it be a little bit more unspoken. But it's another example of what controlled fury can look like in the hands of an expert craftsman, which is exactly what Gene Hackman is. You sent to me the Costner sound of Costner's description of the Hackman career. I didn't listen to it all. Is it good?
It's more of a story about working with him. Yes, and it was kind of a story about Costner, but then Hackman's reaction to it that he really liked. I can pull it up and play it if you want.
Yeah, why don't we? Because I wonder if it was they were together in a film called No Way Out, kind of an underrated thriller from the late 80s, in which Hackman plays Defense Secretary David Bryce, who gets caught in a significant scandal. But yeah, let's listen to him, I think Costner rating him as an actor, and then the particular story that you're talking about.
Once again on the Rich Eisen show. Perfect. Rich Eisen apparently has a really good show.
Yeah.
You know, people ask all the time, who's the best actor, who's the biggest star, who's the blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. The line's long for the great actors I've been able to work with, really is. But I would say probably Gene was the best actor that I'd ever worked with. I think Sean Connery was the biggest star I'd ever worked with.
And that's the Untouchables.
Yeah, and this is too long of a story, but I had one with Gene. When this scene came up, we had been doing every scene to that point around a desk, just like this, every scene. I said to the director, I said, look, I don't feel like it's right. Gene Hackman standing there listening. I feel like it's over here, and it was like, no one was saying anything. The director and I really butted heads on it. Finally, for whatever reason, Gene's just like listening. And finally, for whatever reason, I said, I don't care, it's here. And I hated to do that, but I just said, it's here. And I don't need all of our scenes here. It's here.
Sure.
So we did it. And at one point there was saying, well, what's Gene going to do? And I said, Gene will figure out what to do. Because he's really good. Gene will figure out what to do. So I do the scene, and we do it all day. And it's the scene now that's in the movie. And I remember as I was walking out to my car on MGM lot, Gene was getting in, and he goes, hey, I want to talk to you. And I walked over, and he goes, look, man, if you ever do that in front of me again, I'm just going to, the way you disrespect, I'm just going to tell you, that's not what he said. Mm-hmm. That's what I thought he was going to say.
What did he say?
He looked at me and he said, hey, I went through a divorce. I've been doing a lot of kind of questionable movies lately. And when I saw you fighting for what you wanted today, he said it reminded me of how I used to feel about acting. He says it was good what you did. And then he just got in his car and drove off.
Very interesting. I had not heard that story before, too. Yeah, there's a lot of those. And I thought I'm listening to that, I'm thinking what Costner first said. He said, I thought that's what he was going to say because of everything else we're hearing about how difficult Hackman could make things on a set. He was apparently very exacting and occasionally very annoying as well, as many of the great ones tend to be. There was some reaction to Finchie's interview. I don't remember which show it was on, which syndicated program.
Colin Cowherd.
It was the Colin Cowherd program, I guess, that he, the subject of the Inside the NBA came up. And this has been kind of, I think, this has become the new way, the new clever way to slight the Inside the NBA show. Just a little bit, or try to cut it down to size that, it's just about entertainment. In other words, that hardcore, the sense of it is like, hardcore NBA fans, they know better than to think there's going to be anything resembling real insight.
It's all bits.
And it's all bits. And I categorically reject that accusation. There are times where it can become bit-like. But I think it's an unfair diss of the program because often is that the program you go to get the most precise, in-depth critique or analysis of a given game or a given player? No. But I'll tell you what, man. When you move away a little bit, what they are willing to do, I think, is drill deep and dig deep without fear of whose feelings they're going to hurt as they're doing it. And I think there's great depth in that. I think there's great value in that goes beyond all they're just, it's all entertainment. It's all, you take everything with a grain of salt. Well, that program is made for everybody to enjoy. And so I still find it easily the best show. I don't always agree with the positions that are taken, and I think sometimes there's a tendency to evaluate too much on what they see that night, right? As opposed to, well, what has that team been up to like the previous 15 games? Is this an anomaly? But I think Finchie kind of missed the boat a little bit because Finchie alluded specifically more than anything else to some of the savagery levied at Rudy Gobert during the playoffs last year. And we talked about that extensively at the time. That's really not Inside the NBA. That's not that show. That was a guest host who was sadly brought into the discussion who poisoned the well. I think that Draymond Green's appearances were a detriment. Draymond Green is as smart as anybody when it comes to analyzing, but the personal, that's where Finchie's right. It became personal.
Yeah.
But it became personal because of not a regular panelist. So to me, it's apples and oranges. You got to be very precise about, to me, your critiquing of that program. And if you're critiquing the program, you have to distinguish between when the regular crew is generally on week after week, year after year, and when they decide to experiment by putting Draymond Green into the mix, don't you?
You do, but those other guys didn't mind it.
Well, they didn't discourage it.
Shaq
I'll give
piled
you that.
on.
Yes, yeah.
Charles piled on.
Right.
Kenny, I think, kind of stayed out of it. Ernie did nothing. So I get what you're saying, but they continued so long with Draymond that it did become the show, whether they wanted it to or not. That was the headline of the last couple of weeks of that show.
That's true, but again, this show's been on for how many decades now, and so
almost 3.
It's far broader than that. And I'll take again their fearlessness, because some of the people some of the frankly media members that go after that show, it's almost like they're uncomfortable with how fearless they are. It's almost like They, that's another one of the debates that's broken out now. Well, what's the job of these shows? They need to celebrate the game a little bit more. No, they don't. They're there to evaluate the game. They're there to assess the game. The notion that they have to be flacks for the NBA, that's exactly what some of us like about that program. That doesn't mean me agreeing with them all the time, but it means I love their fearlessness. They've attained a status where no one really can touch them. And to that extent, I think it's very liberating, and it gives them the freedom to be as blunt as possible. Now, they went way too far afield. I'll agree totally. Led by Draymond, but you're right. They could have argued with Draymond, and they didn't very much on his obsession with R. Gobert. All that I thought was rather interesting. All right, we got a couple more items related to Gene Hackman. We've been owning him almost from start to finish, and we think he's worth every minute of it. This is an all-time guy. We're not going to do this for everybody. But to me, we would not have been doing our jobs in a pop culture sense on this program if we did not salute the breadth of this remarkable craftsman's career. And because Hackman is, again, depending on the actor you're talking to, the best actor of the last 50, 60, 70 years. Some actors actually, that's what they believe. That's the one that they say in their mind, above and even beyond Pacino and Dustin Hoffman and
they apparently were buddies forever, like we learned today. I didn't really know that.
That's true.
Hoffman.
They worked together in Pasadena.
Yeah,
in
going
fact,
back to the start.
For a while, when Hackman was married to his first wife and was living in New York, I think Hoffman went to live with him.
Yes,
if I'm not mistaken, for a period of time. And Hackman, he was Dusty. That was the nickname. It wasn't Dustin, it was Dusty.
I love that.
Which is great, too. Very familiar. Let's listen. This is, I think, a brief soundbite in which Hackman is talking about a woman who approached him on the set early when they were doing the Hoosiers motion picture, when they were obviously hanging out in several various southern Indiana towns.
This will include a little bit more than just that.
Okay.
It's kind of like, it's about 2 minutes with that embedded
That's part
in the middle.
of it. Let's listen.
Did you have to twist Hackman's arm to...
No, that's not the right one.
Yeah, we heard that one. That was a good one,
Here
too.
we go.
His low-key performances have enhanced over 30 films and made him a star. But for Oscar winner Gene Hackman, being an actor is more important than being recognized. For his latest film, Hoosiers, which co-stars Dennis Hopper and Barbara Hershey, Hackman returned to his roots. The film was made in Indiana, just 60 miles from his hometown of Danville, Illinois.
A lot of actors, for some reason or other, come from the Midwest. There's probably a theory that it's because they want to get out.
Hackman left Indiana when he was just 16, but during the filming he had an unexpected experience that took him back to his younger days.
The first day of the film, we were working in a small town called New Richmond, and this woman came up to me and told me that she had known my mother as a child in Danville. A couple days later, she brought these pictures of her and my mother. It was really quite touching because my mother was killed in a fire and all our family photographs were destroyed. So it's the only pictures that I have of my mother now.
Hackman plays a down-and-out basketball coach who inspires a small-town team to take their best shot. The gamble pays off, and Hackman takes his team all the way to the state championship.
If you put your effort and concentration into playing to your potential, to be the best that you can be, I don't care what the scoreboard says at the end of the game, in my book, we're going to be winners.
It's about change. It's about what happens with change, how we deal with it, how we learn to give up our ideas about who we are as people.
Why so unfriendly, Miss Fleener?
A man your age comes to a place like this, he's running away from something where he has nowhere else to go.
What I'm doing here has nothing to do with you.
Much of good acting, I feel, and good creative work in the film business and in theater comes from being able to transfer new ideas to what is happening at the moment.
What's happening at the moment for Gene Hackman is Hoosiers. And here he is imitating Kings coach Jerry Reynolds. Both of them seem to know basketball pretty well.
There it is. So
I want to be that newsman.
I like that. Yeah,
that voice is.
Well, I think that was like that's like a local interview, but he got good stuff from Hackman.
Yeah.
But what struck me is Hackman, as the story has been told, I think he mentioned that his mother had died in a fire. I believe the mother had been smoking, and that's how the fire began. That's how he lost his mother, and that's how she was found in their home. And now you have all these decades later, this awful situation still with lots of questions to be answered, right, on exactly what took place inside the Hackman home to lead to the fact that the bodies of both he and his wife found, one of their dogs as well, now being described as suspicious. I believe one of the stories indicated that his wife was almost in a mummified state. This had obviously taken, so this had been at least a number of days have been involved.
Workers had said that they hadn't seen the couple in like almost a couple weeks.
Yeah,
and
exactly
that's why the welfare check happened.
All right, let's do a show wrap. We'll come back and wrap things up and let you know what we have coming up on Friday's program right here in the Fan. There was some reaction to Finchie's interview. I don't remember which show it was on, which syndicated program.
Colin Cowherd.
It was the Colin Cowherd program, I guess, that he, the subject of the Inside the NBA came up. And this has been kind of, I think, this has become the new way, the new clever way to slight the Inside the NBA show. Just a little bit, or try to cut it down to size that, it's just about entertainment. In other words, that hardcore, the sense of it is like, hardcore NBA fans, they know better than to think there's going to be anything resembling real insight.
It's all bits.
And it's all bits. And I categorically reject that accusation. There are times where it can become bit-like, but I think it's an unfair diss of the program because often is that the program you go to get the most precise, in-depth critique or analysis of a given game or a given player? No. But I'll tell you what, man, when you move away a little bit, what they are willing to do, I think, is drill deep and dig deep without fear of whose feelings they're going to hurt as they're doing it. And I think there's great depth in that. I think there's great value in that goes beyond all they're just, it's all entertainment. It's all, you take everything with a grain of salt. Well, that program is made for everybody to enjoy. And so I still find it easily the best show. I don't always agree with the positions that are taken, and I think sometimes there's a tendency to evaluate too much on what they see that night, right? As opposed to, well, what has that team been up to like the previous 15 games? Is this an anomaly? But I think Finchie kind of missed the boat a little bit because Finchie alluded specifically more than anything else to some of the savagery levied at Rudy Gobert during the playoffs last year. And we talked about that extensively at the time. That's really not Inside the NBA. That's not that show. That was a guest host who was sadly brought into the discussion who poisoned the well. I think that Draymond Green's appearances were a detriment. Draymond Green is as smart as anybody when it comes to analyzing, but the personal, that's where Finchie's right. It became personal.
Yeah.
But it became personal because of not a regular panelist. So to me, it's apples and oranges. You got to be very precise about, to me, your critiquing of that program. And if you're critiquing the program, you have to distinguish between when the regular crew is generally on week after week, year after year, and when they decide to experiment by putting Draymond Green into the mix, don't you?
You do, but those other guys didn't mind it.
Well, they didn't discourage it.
Shaq piled on.
Yes, yeah.
Charles piled on.
Right.
Kenny, I think, kind of stayed out of it. Ernie did nothing. So I get what you're saying, but they continued so long with Draymond that it did become the show, whether they wanted it to or not. That was the headline of the last couple of weeks of that show.
That's true, but again, this show's been on for how many decades now, and so
almost 3.
It's far broader than that. And I'll take again their fearlessness, because some of the people who go, some of the frankly media members that go after that show, it's almost like they're uncomfortable with how fearless they are. It's almost like They, that's another one of the debates that's broken out now. Well, what's the job of these shows? They need to celebrate the game a little bit more. No, they don't. They're there to evaluate the game. They're there to assess the game. The notion that they have to be flacks for the NBA, that's exactly what some of us like about that program. That doesn't mean me agreeing with them all the time, but it means I love their fearlessness. They've attained a status where no one really can touch them. And to that extent, I think it's very liberating, and it gives them the freedom to be as blunt as possible. Now, they went way too far afield, I'll agree totally, led by Draymond, but you're right, they could have argued with Draymond, and they didn't very much on his obsession with R. Gobert. All that I thought was rather interesting. All right, we got a couple more items related to Gene Hackman. We've been owing him almost from start to finish, and we think he's worth every minute of it. This is an all-time guy. We're not going to do this for everybody. But to me, we would not have been doing our jobs in a pop culture sense on this program if we did not salute the breadth of this remarkable craftsman's career. And because Hackman is, again, depending on the actor you're talking to, the best actor of the last 50, 60, 70 years. Some actors actually, that's what they believe. That's the one that they say in their mind, above and even beyond Pacino and Dustin Hoffman and
And they apparently were buddies forever, like we learned today. I didn't really know that.
That's true.
Hoffman.
Yeah, they worked together in Pasadena.
Yeah,
in
going
fact,
back to the start.
For a while, when Hackman was married to his first wife and was living in New York, I think Hoffman went to live with him.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken, for a period of time. And to Hackman, he was Dusty. That was the nickname. It wasn't Dustin. It was Dusty.
I love that.
Which is great, too. Very familiar. Let's listen. This is, I think, a brief soundbite in which Hackman is talking about a woman who approached him on the set early when they were doing the Hoosiers motion picture, when they were obviously hanging out in several various southern Indiana towns.
This will include a little bit more than just that.
Okay.
It's kind of like, it's about 2 minutes with that embedded
That's part
in the
of it. Let's listen.
Did you have to twist Hackman's arm to...
No, that's not the right one.
Yeah, we heard that one. That was a good one,
Here
too.
we go.
His low-key performances have enhanced over 30 films and made him a star. But for Oscar winner Gene Hackman, being an actor is more important than being recognized. For his latest film, Hoosiers, which co-stars Dennis Hopper and Barbara Hershey, Hackman returned to his roots. The film was made in Indiana, just 60 miles from his hometown of Danville, Illinois.
A lot of actors, for some reason or other, come from the Midwest. There's probably a theory that it's because they want to get out.
Hackman left Indiana when he was just 16. But during the filming, he had an unexpected experience that took him back to his younger days.
The first day of the film, we were working in a small town called New Richmond, and this woman came up to me and told me that she had known my mother as a child in Danville. A couple days later, she brought these pictures of her and my mother. It was really quite touching because my mother was killed in a fire and all our family photographs were destroyed. So it's the only pictures that I have of my mother now.
Hackman plays a down-and-out basketball coach who inspires a small-town team to take their best shot. The gamble pays off, and Hackman takes his team all the way to the state championship.
If you put your effort and concentration into playing to your potential, to be the best that you can be, I don't care what the scoreboard says at the end of the game, in my book, we're going to be winners.
It's about change. It's about what happens with change, how we deal with it, how we learn to give up our ideas about who we are as people.
Why so unfriendly, Miss Flinger?
A man your age comes to a place like this, he's running away from something where he has nowhere else to go.
What I'm doing here has nothing to do with you.
Much of good acting, I feel, and good creative work in the film business and in theater comes from being able to transfer new ideas to what is happening at the moment.
What's happening at the moment for Gene Hackman is Hoosiers. And here he is imitating Kings coach Jerry Reynolds. Both of them seem to know basketball pretty well.
There it is. So
I want to be that newsman.
How about that? Yeah,
that voice is.
Well, I think that was like it's like a local interview, but he got good stuff from Hackman.
Yeah.
But what struck me is Hackman, as the story has been told, I think he mentioned that his mother had died in a fire. I believe the mother had been smoking, and that's how the fire began. That's how he lost his mother, and that's how she was found in their home. And now you have all these decades later, this awful situation, still with lots of questions to be answered, right, on exactly what took place inside the Hackman home to lead to the fact that the bodies of both he and his wife found, one of their dogs as well, now being described as suspicious. I believe one of the stories indicated that his wife was almost in a mummified state. This had obviously taken, so this had been at least a number of days had been involved.
Workers had said that they hadn't seen the couple in like almost a couple weeks.
Yeah,
and
exactly
that's why the welfare check happened.
All right, let's do a show wrap. We'll come back and wrap things up and let you know what we have coming up on Friday's program right here in the fan.
Show wrap is brought to you by American Pressure, commercial grade pressure washer since 1975.
It's the bumper to bumper show wrap.
He's a tough nut, Gene Hackman, but he was really good. And he was really difficult. We can say it now, but he was a tough guy because, like, older, great actors do not give young directors much of a chance. They're really rough on him. And Gene was really rough on Wes, and I used to kind of step in there and just, try to defend my friend. I watched him once do like 25 takes where he did it perfectly with an actor. who kept blowing it every single time. Big, long camera move and panning, all this stuff. Gene would do it perfectly. The other actor would blow it, and I go like, oh, God. I was watching it going, no wonder this guy wants to throttle people. Yeah. And then he sort of gave just a sort of an ordinary performance, and the other actor got it right, and I thought Gene was going to throw the guy off the ledge of the building. But so he was a great one.
Bill Murray on Gene Hackman. He was in. They were in the Royal Tenenbaums together, correct? That was wasn't that his last role?
No, he had a couple more after that.
Okay, last probably bigger one.
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
I would say
for sure. And then he said he retired largely because of some heart issues, and so he's been out of it. Has Hackman for quite some time. A film noir guy wrote much earlier, my favorite Hackman film by far sits under the radar for most, Night Moves, a seedy film from 1975, well worth seeking out. It stars Hackman as an ex-professional football player turned L.A. private dick who undercovers a series of sinister events while searching for the missing teenage daughter of a former movie actress. The cast features James Woods and a very young and very free Melanie Griffith in her film debut. That is a really good tout. That is a highly underrated film. Night Moves, if you're looking to celebrate the Gene Hackman legacy and you're trying to kind of go off the beaten track a little bit, that would be a very good example of what we are talking about. Tonight's plan is Fan on Demand, Wild Weekly, and then Minnesota Wild Hockey in Utah. We chatted with Russo on the current condition, the delicate condition of the club at 5. You could podcast that later if you'd like. In addition, the inbox is open between 4:30 and 5 o'clock. And a nice conversation with Minnesota's own Mike Trudell, now a Lakers sideline reporter, who joined us between 3:15 and about 3:40 or so to talk largely about the Luka phenomenon. Did not ask him about the Hookah Luka, but we did get into some other aspects of that story and also some good stuff on LeBron James as well.
You did talk to him a little bit about that.
Actually, we did. You're right. We did. That's true.
He compared it to the ex-girlfriend gets the glow up, and then you tell people what she's really like.
And it appears that he has not touched the Palinka jacket. But he did see it from a distance, apparently.
I like how he said he's never seen Rob wear the same outfit twice.
Yeah, that's about as California as it gets.
So true.
Tomorrow is Friday. No Gerbschmidt tomorrow, but we do plan to visit with Ben Gessling. And we have a visit, a date with destiny with Lavelle E. Neal III.
What do you think of Lavelle and my battling in our group chat today? Did you get caught up on any of those?
I want to get into it actually tomorrow. I was confused by Lavelle's concern. It has to do over the games, the Northwestern ultimately forfeited.
The women's basketball team.
Going to the West Coast?
Yes, during the wildfires.
Yeah, I don't understand. I mean, I don't know exactly. So there are a lot of people who are apparently standing tall for Northwestern thinking this was a miscarriage of justice.
Yeah.
But again, unless there's an extenuating circumstance I haven't been told about, I don't know what you do. I mean, it's the league. You're supposed to go. We understand it's a pain in the butt. There's a lot of people who are frustrated by some of these tours of duty because of how wide the Big Ten, the wide swath the Big Ten now includes. But sorry, I just don't have a lot of sympathy. If you're supposed to show up for the games, you're supposed to show up for the games, right?
And they had other games. It was during the wildfires, which was the big controversy.
I get that,
but everybody else played. USC, UCLA, Penn State all played. Northwestern just said to the league, "We're not going.
We're not going." Yeah. So I don't know that I necessarily blame the league for saying, well, then the games are going to be, everybody else made the trip. You are a member of the league. We're not crossing any boundaries that we're not supposed to by you playing. I don't. I thought Lavelle. We'll talk to Lavelle about it tomorrow. Maybe he can convince me otherwise. But I'm with you. I didn't think that. There's much there regarding this sort of. I feel like there's kind of a growing, like a bit of a groundswell to stand tall for Northwestern. They try to do the right thing, and they got cut off at the knees by the big bad Big Ten bureaucracy.
Right.
I mean, you play the games or you don't play the games, right?
Yeah,
pretty much.
Everybody else played the games out in California.
That's what I thought. I swear that newsman sounded like Bill Curtis. That's Tom from Columbia Heights. That was the sound you played earlier. It was not Bill Curtis.
Okay.
That much I can tell you. I don't remember the name of the individual, but it is worth noting again, if you missed it earlier, that Hackman spent some time at WDAN, Danville, Illinois.
That's cool.
Where he grew up.
That's cool.
And, we didn't get to, but we're out of time now, I suppose, is his acceptance speech when he got the Lifetime Achievement Award. We're out. Maybe we'll save that for tomorrow. But there was a really good anecdote there talking about getting lost as a kid in the movies in Danville, going to the double features, getting a bag of popcorn. And he was one of those kids who thought it was magical, got lost in it. And what's interesting about that is, Hackman has sort of this hard-bitten, more cynical reputation a little bit. But in the end, in that speech, it was very romantic about what exactly drew him to wanting to be in motion pictures at all. So that's the plan. I'll give you the plan for tomorrow. I think what we're going to finish with tonight is what probably makes all the sense in the world, and that is the Guardsy's favorite speech, right? Probably your favorite coach's speech from a cinematic standpoint. Is that correct?
That's fictional, yeah.
Fictional,
it's hard to beat Kurt Russell as Herb Brooks.
True.
We got to see that with Four Nations.
That's right.
Last week again. And by the way, I'm so stupid, it took me like 3 minutes to figure out the players were the actual USA and Canada players.
Yeah.
I was looking for Nate Miller, the Minnesota guy that was in the movie.
Yes.
I'm like, why is Brock Faber? Oh, Brock Faber's playing. I see what they're doing. That's how dumb I am.
Yeah, well.
But yeah, in terms of fictional speeches, this is as good as it gets, what we're going to end the show with.
Hoosiers, Norman Dale, it's his opportunity to very subtly attempt to motivate his players in an extremely non-cliched way. And let's just say little Guardsy got goosebumps the first time he heard it.
Old Guardsy still does.
And I probably was not far behind. Thanks for listening. Thanks for all the great contributions today. And let's listen to Norman Dale. Gene Hackman, one last time as we leave today's show.
There's a tradition in tournament play. Not talk about the next step until you've climbed the one in front of you. I'm sure going to the state finals is beyond your wildest dreams, so let's just keep it right there. Forget about the crowds, the size of the school, their fancy uniforms, and remember what got you here. Focus on the fundamentals that we've gone over time and time again. And most important, don't get caught up thinking about winning or losing this game. If you put your effort and concentration into playing to your potential to be the best that you can be, I don't care what the scoreboard says at the end of the game, in my book, we're going to be winners. Okay?